Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Hour. Our topic today is going to be ways to create a SharePoint site via a Power Automate flow. So basically automated site creation. So there's several methods, several considerations, and we'll dig into all those and I'll demonstrate. Here's the stinger. All right, you all voted. I always send out a newsletter the day before Power Hour. You all voted for this topic, automating SharePoint site creation. This is always, ever since the dawn of SharePoint, this has been a very popular topic of provisioning SharePoint sites. So you might want to have a certain form that people fill out to create a site. You might want to have a certain process for people to go through to create a site. So I want to show you, and this is something that we get asked by customers and build things like this for customers all the time. There are a lot of different permutations of it, but I am not a programmer. I am not a developer. So I know that, of course, developers can do this and developers can create very, big custom solutions for this, but I'm going to show you some ways just using no code, just a Power Automate flow and several different actions that you'll be able to tap into and the pros and cons of all these different ways of creating SharePoint sites. And I actually have some slides to share with you. Okay, let me go ahead and share my desktop and my slides. Okay, here we go. All right, so we have three different actions that we're going to talk about. So I'll talk about the way you would trigger this concept of creating a site, the way that you create the site, and then also we'll talk about some things that you might want to happen after the site gets created. So first of all, let's talk about these three major ways. Now, of course, there are going to be other ways. These are the three most common ways. And of course, they don't involve needing to be a programmer, developer, deploying code, or anything like that. So this first one is an action in a flow called send an HTTP request to SharePoint. And it uses SharePoint Web Services. And there's going to be a certain set of kind of like a little snippet of code that you insert into this action that tells it how to configure the web service, and it tells it certain settings like site name, site description, who you want the site owner to be. And this action just creates a SharePoint site. It doesn't create a Microsoft 365 group. It's only just a site. So it's going to be based off of one of the basic SharePoint site templates that have been around forever. And that's what you're going to get, is just a SharePoint site. So the next action that you're going to have an option to use is Intra, and it's Intra ID. Intra used to be called Azure, and they rename things, but it's an action called create an Office 365 group. And they've also got several other actions in there, like create groups, create security group. With the Intra action, you need to be a Microsoft 365 you need to be a SharePoint admin to be able to authenticate to Intra, to be able to create the sites. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that if you have a flow that you're using this action in, there's an extra consideration to make for the authentication part of that, of being able to run that at sort of a higher level of permissions. So what this does is it creates the whole Microsoft 365 group, which of course also includes a SharePoint site, but it also includes all the things that Microsoft 365 groups include, like it gets its own email address and team calendar, and I think even a planner plan is all in there. So it's got a little bit less customization when you create these. It's some of the other methods give you the ability to insert a site name, site description, and several things. So what each one of these actions entails is going to be slightly different as far as how detailed you can get in customizing it. Also, another negative to the Intra action is that it just creates a public group. So you would have to do an extra step to go after the site's created to go change it to a private group. or you'd have to get a programmer involved and go into Azure. So it's not just a setting that you have to make it a public or private Microsoft 365 group. So that might be a deal killer for you. And then the third method is just an action called create a team. And create a team also creates a SharePoint site. It also creates a Teams team, and of course a Microsoft 365 group also. So that's the one that creates the most stuff. And so you'll have, one of the pros is that you'll have full collaboration. You'll have all these things that you might need to have chat and collaboration around that new site. And then it might be overkill though, if you only just need a SharePoint site. So it's kind of up to you. One of the good things about the create a team action though, is it actually does let you pick whether you want it to be private or public. So if you want to be able to pick whether it's private or public, you have to create a whole, a Microsoft Teams team. But if it's okay, if you don't need a team and you just want the intra and you just want to create the group, then you'd have to go the extra step after the group's created to go to that group's settings and change it to private. So again, none of these are the same. So it's a lot of different pros and cons for all of them. And I put screenshots here showing what they each look like. So yeah, and you all, of course, you all are in the chat. Just let me know if you have any questions as we go. So if you are watching for the first time, there's a link below to request to join. And we add you to our general channel and our Power Hour team. And this is where we have this little chat bubble where you can watch the video and chat at the same time. So, hey, everybody. And then we also have some notes where I put a few extra links pertaining to each Power Hour. So that's where we're chatting. So there are a few other considerations when you're doing this site provisioning concept. You're going to say, maybe have a form, something people are filling out when they're requesting a site. Some people might create a SharePoint list that they just use as a site request list, and then they'll put fields like, what is your site name? What's your site description? Who does the site owner need to be? So here is, this is the concept of site metadata. So what do you want to ask them? What do you want to ask them? So Mark is saying, why do you not consider using a site design? Well, this is what I'm asking you right here. So 3 basic things you have to have. Well, you don't really have to have a description, but you have a site name, of course, a site description, and there's also a URL in there that it's going to create. So you're going to have like a display name and a URL. So I'll talk a little bit more. There are some nuances in there as far as how you control what the URL is. So then you might want to have a site design also. Do you want to ask the person when you're provisioning this site, which, and if you've created custom site designs, which site design they want to use? So I've put links in the notes tab there for the other Power Hour that we did about site designs, all the details, because it requires running a PowerShell script. And just, it's a whole other hour of how to actually create site designs. But I will show you that in the flow that I'm creating, how to actually apply the site design to. So that's another one we could add to the list. I was sort of asking you all here, what other things? So Mark's right on the ball. He's answering the question before he even saw it on the screen. Is there anything else that you like asking as part of the form that people are filling out when they're creating a new site? Maybe you could ask them if they want it to be a public or private site. So yeah, so just kind of ponder that. And if you think of some other of these sort of basic questions that we should be asking when we're creating the site, just let me know in the chat. But those are just some things to ponder. So now that we're done with the slides, let's go ahead and go over to the flow and talk about these examples of the flow. So what I'm doing is, in all these flows I'm using in this demonstration, I'm just using a manual trigger. So your trigger, I don't want to get too into the weeds of what all the possible different triggers could be. Your trigger could be that somebody's creating an item in a SharePoint list, like a site request list. It could be that you're creating a row in a database somewhere. So whatever your trigger happens to be, what I want to focus on is what you can do in ways that you're creating the site and then things that we can do with the site after it's been created. One of the common things that people like to do that site designs don't include is customize the homepage, just the web parts on the homepage. And that's a huge, usually in my experience, the main thing people want to be in this template is the web parts on the homepage. And site designs don't have that. So I'll cover that here too as well. So let's cover just the action of creating the site first, and then we're going to do some extra things like copying, customizing the homepage, setting that new homepage as the default homepage, and then also the concept of copying files over. You might have a template of where you want a bunch of files to come from whenever a new site gets created. And you might want to do additional things like if it's a team, add channels, add owners and members and things like that. So we're just going to cover the basics first. So what I'm doing here is I'm just skipping this tutorial. Make sure I'm zoomed in here. Yeah. And for the trigger that I'm adding, I'm just doing manual. So this is what I'm going to use as my form. So this is the form that people are going to be filling out when they're requesting a site. So again, we could talk about other triggers. Maybe at the end we might have time to discuss those, but we're going to use this form, this manual trigger inputs, as the form they're filling out. So I'm just going to say site name, and then site description, and then what else might we want to know, like an owner. So site owner, and that's where they enter a person. We'll start off with those. So this is the information we're going to have. And then let's talk about all the different actions. So I've actually, let me see, I want to be able to save this because I want to be able to, actually, let me just go, I want to flip to a different one over in another tab just so I can reference it real quick because I don't want to have to type all that code. So this first one we're going to do is flow 1, just SharePoint. So this is going to be just SharePoint that we're creating. We're going to be doing that HTTP action. So I'm going to take one that I've created and paste it in here and show you what it entails. So I'm going to take all this code here too, and I'll paste it over into the notes so that you all can see. Go to the notes tab, and then, because it's a lot. So site, there, I just pasted the thing that you see on the screen. Okay, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. And then what we have here is, let me kind of break it down. So this is now this site address, that can just be your root site. It doesn't matter what you put here. This site address has nothing to do with what it's creating. You're doing method post, and here's the URI. I'll copy and paste that too. I'll just copy and paste it to the chat. And then this is telling it to create a site. And then you have just this whole body of what the request is. So this is where you can put your information about what they're filling out in the form, your dynamic information. So I'm going to say, now you could have a different title, like display name of your site, different than the URL with this method. So the way I accomplish that is, so if somebody just types like test1, TEST space ONE as the site name, then I don't want it to just mash those two words together necessarily. I want to maybe say wherever there are spaces, just put an underscore, because that actually improves your search in SharePoint if you have actual English words separated out by underscores or hyphens in all of your site names, document library, list names, file names, everything. It helps if you have words aren't mashed together. So the method I use to take whatever they enter in here as the site name and also create what I want to be the URL is I'm going to take their site name and I'm going to replace all the spaces with underscores. And I'm just going to do that by creating a variable. So I'll say var. And all the other methods don't necessarily have this. So it's just one of those pros and cons. So I'll initialize a variable. So var site name, make it a string. And then I'm basically replacing. So I'm using this function and I'm replacing what's in this trigger. Let me see, what did I call it? Site name. So I'm replacing that, and yeah, it was already the same thing. And it's just taking all the spaces and putting underscores. So then that gives me just something that I can use to be the site URL. So I could have a display name and a URL. So now when I'm creating the site, here are all the spots where I need to put that dynamic content. Is my head in the way? Let me see. Yeah, it is. Okay, so let me move that a little bit. There we go. Now, so I'm going to I put little asterisks where things need to go. So this is the title. So the title is going to be whatever someone typed when they were filling out that form. So that's the site name. And then the URL this is my tenant. So this is actually my Wonderlara. It is iwmentorpowerhour.sharepoint.com. So I copy this from a different tenant. Okay, and so make sure and put your URL of your site, wherever it's going to end up. My sites all get created under sites / your tenant could potentially have a different word here, like teams. So pay attention to whenever sites get created, where it puts them in the URL. So, and then this is where I want to put that name with the variable that I'm taking all the spaces out of. And then this is just the basic team site template that I'm using. Here's the description. So I can say I want the description that I typed when I filled out this form, site description. And then for the owner, I'm going to put, again, I filled that out in the form too. So who do I want the owner to be? So this is my site owner, and that's their email address. So let's try that out. I'm just going to try out. I don't think I've ever done the owner part right here from one of these inputs. So that's the part that could break. So we'll just give that a shot. So flow 1, just SharePoint. So we're going to try this out. And so we're going to go through several iterations. So we'll try it out, we'll run it, and then we're going to add extra things so that after it creates the site, it can create the home page and other things. So I'll go ahead and run this thing. And I'm going to click run. And so this is my little form. The first time you fill it out, you have to click continue. And then I'll call this test, and I'm putting a space in it on purpose. And I just put what time it is right now. There. And then this is cool. Is my description. Site owner. I'm just going to put Brenda in there as a site owner instead of me. All right. And then it might not make me an owner though if I do that. So let's just try it. Okay, so now it's running. Now it's creating the site. So what is the URL going to be? It's going to be test_1119, right? So, and I'll be able to see it in my list of sites. I'm a SharePoint admin. So I'll be able to just refresh my list of sites here. And then I've got them sorted by the newest sites on top. And then here's my new site. And it says primary admin Brenda Cox. I might not even have access to it. Yeah, no. So since I don't have access to it, I'll just go add myself as an owner. I'll probably just make myself the owner of all the other ones so I can get to them. All right. And so here's my new site. So it's got test space 119, that's the title, and then it's got test underscore 1119, and that's the URL. So it gave it a different URL than display name. And then it's also got, now the site description is going to be here under site information. There's where I wrote this is cool. So that's where I put the description. So it's in there. So it did everything correctly. So now let's move on to the next flow to no do. And we'll do, just click skip. And then this is going to be the number 2 intra. I don't remember what I called the other one. And then also I'm going to use a manual trigger. So one thing that, let me just do this. Let me just save a little bit of time here, and I'll just do save as, and then I'll just say, I'll be able to use that same trigger I used in that same variable that I created. Flow 2 M365 group. What do y'all think so far? So do you think you would typically want to have a site design, or what other types of components would you want to have when you're creating this? So first of all, let me go ahead and just turn this on so I don't forget. And then I'll go in here and edit it. And then I'm just going to get rid of this SharePoint action that I created. And then I'm going to put the intra. And this is the one that creates the Microsoft 365 group, which of course also includes a SharePoint site. So notice that this one has create Office 365 group, create security group. It's got a lot of stuff with users and groups. So I'll just do create Office 365 group. It doesn't really have any different or additional settings than create group. They just look slightly different. So here's where I'm going to put the display name is going to be what I typed in as the site name. And then description, just keep plugging these in. Mail nickname, that is where it's going to, where I want to have that one with the underscore in it, so it's not a big mashed together word. And that's also going to be the URL. So that's where I'm going to use my variable here. Security enabled, no. It's not a security group, it's a Microsoft 365 group. So I'm just putting no for both of these. So now I'll go ahead and save that one. And I'll run it. And you'll see what that involves when it creates that one. It's just going by pretty quickly, right? It's pretty easy. And then, so one thing when you're using the intra, that authenticator, if someone else tries to go run this flow, they're going to get stopped, because if they're not a SharePoint admin, it's not going to let them run this flow because they don't have access to intra, which is an admin functionality. So the additional step you would need to do to be able to let in users run this one is you'd have to do run only users. And you'd also have to say for the intra, I want to use my name, my credentials. So I'm Laura Rogers. I'm an admin. I created this flow. I want it to use my credentials when anyone runs this flow. So you would add your whoever you want, what end users you want to be able, you could put a group here too, to be able to run the flow, and then change it to use the connection and the credentials of the person who is an admin. All right, so now I'll go ahead and run that. And I'll call this test. It's 11:24 now. And site owner, I'll just put me. Got a lot of Laura's in here. I think that's, well, I'm surprised it lets me put people that are, let's see, people that are external users. I think that's the right one. We'll see. There's too many Laura's in there. Okay. Now that one ran, and now I can go to my list of sites. and refresh this. And put my recent ones on top, and then, ooh, that one hasn't finished running yet. So let me see. It looks like it ran correctly. That's good. And it keeps re-sorting them every time. Oh, there we go. There it is, test 1124. So now this one, you can tell, looks a little bit different. It's got, see, it's got public group up here because now this is a Microsoft 365 group. Let me show you the other one real quick. The other one that was just a SharePoint site, let it render. Come on, it always takes a minute for these little gears and things to show up here. So this one's just a SharePoint site. It just has this site access, and it lets you, it's got basically permissions, and permissions, of course, are done differently when you have a Microsoft 365 group. So this one's the Microsoft 365 group. It has this public group thing up here, and it has, go to site information, I could change it to private. And then so that's how I could accomplish that. And then it's also going to have, since it's a group, it's also going to have the ability for me to add members to it. Now, am I the owner of this group? Yeah. Yeah. So again, so that's a group. So now let's do the third one. Fascinating, right? Now the third one is going to create a Microsoft team. So I'll just do save as flow 3 team. And I'll go ahead and make this so it is turned on. So let's see, I'll go ahead and edit this. And yeah, Dan, that's a great question. Trade-offs between Office 365 group, site, and just a site. So yeah, let me delete this. Office 365 group has an email address. It has a group. It puts it in your Outlook. It's got a calendar, a group calendar that it comes with. And Office 365 groups are very simple to add people to. You just click add members, and it's got members and owners, and it's very simple. Microsoft SharePoint sites don't have a group. So a lot of things in Microsoft 365 are centered around assuming everything's a Microsoft 365 group. So if it's just a site, it's a little bit more complex to manage the permissions. It's not going to have a group. It's not going to have that shared calendar. You're not going to be able to give it a team. So if you have a Microsoft 365 group, even if you don't create it as a team initially, you can add a team, just add a team to it, but you can't do that with a SharePoint site. So here is the teams. I'll go to my teams action. And then it just says create a team. So this one's, I've got team name. So I put whatever they put as site name. It's got a description, site description, and then it's got visibility, public or private. So that's a good thing, is that I can say visibility, public or private. Notice that on this screen, it doesn't have anything about who the owners and members are. So I'll actually have to do a different action, and I'll have to say add member to a team. So add member to a team does both things. It lets you add a member and or an owner. So who's the person that I want to add to the team? I'll just put myself. What is that? Just grab that. It just needs your full email address. So it's kind of a pain that it doesn't render it. So what's the team? I have to use the dynamic data of the team that it just created. And then do I want this person to be an owner? Yes. So then I would do add a member for more of these if I wanted this flow to automatically add more people to it. So that's the add a member to a team. So I'll go ahead and save this one. And notice that for this one, it didn't give me an option of what I wanted to have as the URL versus the display name. So this is the one where if you just put spaces in your site name, it's just going to automatically mash them together. So I'll show you what that looks like. Go ahead and run that and then authenticate to Teams, say test 1130, and then testing 1, 2, 3, site owner, and that's going to be, I'll just put me. Okay, that one is running now. And then I'll go refresh this. See, make sure that it gave me, yeah, it put me as the owner on that other. Okay, that's good. So notice that it has, these look a little bit different when they're, see it says team site, no Microsoft 365 group. That's that first one I created. And then the next one just says team site. And then let me refresh this again. And yeah, usually kind of lately or nowadays, people don't create just a plain SharePoint site that's not a group. So I would tend to lean towards one of the latter two of the options that we've been talking about today. Either an Office 365 group or a team. Okay, here's my test 1130. Now notice this one says it's a team site. It says it's got group owners and also has an icon saying that it's got a team. So now I can go to this site and so that's what it looks like. So now that we've shown what it looks like to create 3 different sites in 3 different ways and kind of some of those pros and cons, let's talk about some of the extras. Let's talk about some additional things. And the most common thing that people like to do is to customize the home page. So what I'm going to do is, what you'll probably want is you'll want a home page that exists somewhere else already and that you just want to have a copy of it, right? That's the easiest way, is just to set something up, have it exist, and then have it just say, let's just use this and make a copy of it. So I'm going to say just this homepage, the Power Hour homepage. That might be a little ambitious because I've got like a lot going on here. So we'll just use this and notice that. So what it's going to do when you are doing this and taking a home page and making it part of the site provisioning is just inherently every home page is just a file. So you have this library called site pages and your home page is just a file in that library. So my home page happens to be this one right here. With this URL, employee onboarding team home, because I had applied some sort of template and it had created that new home page. So when I go to home, I can actually see the URL up here, employee onboarding team home. So that's what I'm going to need to copy. So I'm going to need to reference this site pages / employee onboarding team home. And that's what I'm going to take and copy over after I've created a new site. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and just go back over to this third flow that I created, and we'll just use that. Oh, I didn't show you one more thing, is that notice that it mashed together test 1130. I didn't have a way of putting an underscore in between them because I didn't have a separate display name and URL like I did on the other 2 options. So just want to point that out real quick. That might be important for your requirements. So we'll go ahead and just edit this latest one here. And so the next thing that I want to do is, so it's adding a member to a team. Sometimes you want to just wait a little bit because creating the site might just take a minute. I want to make sure the site's been completely created before it starts trying to copy the home page over. So I'll just say delay 1 minute. And you could kind of test that out and see if you need that or not. And then I'm going to say copy file, SharePoint copy file. And so all I'm going to do, and this is nothing fancy, it's just taking a file from one site and copying it over to another one. So I'm just going to say copy file, and the home page is just a file. All right, so the current site, which one do I want to copy it from? That's going to be my main. This is that home page that I was showing you right here. And then the file to copy is going to be, you can just drill down into site pages. And this is one that with that kind of, that's weird. Did I pick the wrong site? Site pages. I don't see it in there. Oh, no. Okay. No, it's this one. I got the wrong site. So it's sites/power hour. That's what I did. Okay. Sites/power. It's this one. Okay. No wonder I didn't see that file name. And site pages. And then it's going to have that kind of weird, this one, employee onboarding team home. That's the one I want to copy. And then where do I want it to go? I want it to go to the new site that I just created here. So the destination site is going to be a custom value. So I'm going to I need to put a variable in there. So I'm going to get my URL, and then I need to put a variable here for the destination site address. Now, for this one, it is going to create, when it's creating this team, it's going to create a URL that has no spaces in it. So this is kind of tricky because I can't just insert whatever someone typed here because it might have spaces, and you can't have spaces in a URL. So I have to do something a little fancy with this one. I have to basically remove, I'm just going to take this replace thing that I was using that I used in the other flows. And I'm going to say, instead of replacing a space with an underscore, just replace the space with nothing. Just so it's just going to take the spaces out. So that should work. All right, so then copy file, sites/, and then that's going to be my variable. I need to put that, be sure to put that slash back in there because it'll remove it for you. And then the destination folder is going to be site pages. So I just need to type site pages like that. And I have, make sure. Actually have like an example over here that I'm using just to double check and make sure it's okay. And then if another file is already there, I'll just say replace it. Usually another file is not going to already be there with like a weird name like this because it's a brand new site. But yeah, it's /site pages is the destination folder, even if you don't see anything when you click the little folder. So that's how, first of all, it's got to copy it over. And then the hard part, the more complex part, is that you need it to, I have to use that HTTP web service thing to be able to actually set that new page as the home page. So I'm going to take copy, I'm going to copy one that I've already done and paste it here because it's just a lot. And set default home page. Okay, so here's my site address. The site address is got to be, let's see, that new site that I create, right? So that's going to be, oops, what is that? Yeah, that's going to be my new site. I had that in my clipboard. There we go. Sites /, and then it's going to be my variable. Oops. Okay, method post, and then this is all just kind of all the verbiage that you have to have for the very custom set, you know, a new file as the home page. So site pages, so this is going to be whatever the name of that file was that I was copying over, I just put that in here. So employee onboarding team home. Yeah, employee-onboarding team home. That's going to be what I'm copying over. And so that's what I'm telling it to set as the home page. So if this is going to vary, you could put variables here. All right, so now it's going to create the site, it's going to copy the new file over, and then it's going to set the home page. Pretty cool, right? Now, some other things you might want to do, I'll go ahead and save this and run it, are going to be to create a bunch of files. So what you do is you go do a get files action and get all the files from the site that you want to copy it from. And then you're going to use you can use copy file action and just copy them over to the new site. It depends on if you have, a whole bunch of a lot of folder structure. You might have to do something fancy with making sure that it creates all the folders. If you need to have empty folders, some people like to do that. I like to use good old-fashioned metadata and multiple document libraries, and using column metadata to categorize things and avoid folders. But just pretty much all of the different projects I've been involved in where a customer wants to create like a site template and kind of do this, they always have a bunch of folders and they always have a bunch of files, and typically they don't want to use content types or make people have to click the new drop down to use templates. They just want all the files to already be there. So and again, that's what you have to just kind of think about the best practice versus what users are used to and comfortable with. And sometimes it's just easier to let the users have their little set of templates they're used to having. So, all right, so I'll go ahead and test this one out. I'll go ahead and run it, and authenticating. I know what you mean, Catherine, about metadata. It's just, I've been, for 20 years in SharePoint, we've been trying to tell people don't use folders, use metadata to categorize things, and they're just not doing it. So it's kind of a battle, but it's a battle that I've kind of given up on a lot of the time. So it depends on if your organization lets you be very strict and enforce certain things and make people do things a certain way, then more power to you. But the SMBs that I work with do not. They just let the users just use the folders and the templates and the files. And so I'll call this test 1142 and testing whatever. Site owner, me, and go. So this one's going to not only create the new site, but create a new homepage. Okay, so let's see. Jur has got a lot in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, you have to be a group owner to manage members. And if it's a site, you'd have to be an owner or a site collection admin to manage members. Create sites when the requirements are just for a bucket or area to store files, and create lists for a specific need. Let's see. Oh, sometimes you said when people think they want a team, it might be just fine to give them a Teams channel. Channels are a good point. So that's another thing. It's another capability that you have with these Teams actions is there are Teams actions to add channels. So as part of this site provisioning, if you have certain channels that need to be in that team, channels actually become a folder in the document library. It's just one level of folders, but each channel becomes a folder. So if you tell it to create a team and create the channels, then it will have a library with folders in it. So some questions, you're right to ask them, do you need a group calendar, an email box? Do you need planner? Do you need channels? So if they don't need any of those things, maybe they just need a plain old site. Okay, let me see this newer one, test 1142. So that's the Teams one that I created. Look at that. How cool. So it put my new homepage on there. You like that? That's a fun one. So now I don't have any news and announcements on this site, and it took just this quick link that I had and just put the exact same thing on here. It gave it this random color scheme. So you could add something additional, maybe like if you have a brand, we did a whole other power hour about the brand center. If you want to have a brand center set up and have it so that it creates these sites as part of a hub, that would be kind of a whole other different way that you could do it. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Just regular channels are a folder in a library. If someone creates a private channel from within Teams, that actually creates an entirely new SharePoint site behind the scenes. Hopefully users are not going to that SharePoint site and they're just using it as a channel, because that could just get so messy and confusing. But I think sometimes they are. But I don't think Microsoft intends for them to be doing that. All right, so here's my new site and my new homepage, and it copied over a lot of the things that had settings in them, like upcoming events and news. It doesn't have any events or news on this site, but it's all just ready. It's got the images I set up. It's all got a lovely little template on the homepage. So let's see, what do you have? So another thing that you can do, there's one more thing, is that you can apply a template. And so if you have created those custom site designs using PowerShell, and if your company has site designs, how do you know if your company has any site designs? Well, if I go to this apply a site template and I've got from your organization, if I have anything here, those are custom site designs that your organization has created and deployed via PowerShell. So I haven't done that in here, but I want to show you what that action looks like. So I'll go ahead and go to this flow and I've got an action for that. Let me copy it. So I'm going to say, I'll just put it, you probably want to put it before the home page. I don't think it matters, but I'll just right click and paste that. So you can see what that syntax looks like. It's probably, my head is in the way. And let's see. So move that over a little bit. Oops. Close some of these. Okay. So this one has, it doesn't, okay, so this part doesn't matter, the site address, that could just be your root site, but it's got, and I think I just found this on the web at some point. I don't remember where I found it. It's pretty standard. I'll just copy and paste that into the notes since it's several different things. So it's method post, and the notes are not pulling up. This little notes tab in Teams is really odd. It doesn't, see, I just click on it and it's got nothing there. I'll just put it in the chat. If y'all want that, I'll just paste it. Okay, I don't know, sometimes the notes tab just crashes. So I pasted that, and then this one is going to be where I'm going to put some asterisks, site name. So that's where you would put your variable that has what you want the site name to be. So I'll copy that and paste that in the chat too. And this is your site design ID. So when you use PowerShell to create a site design, each custom site design you have is going to have this long GUID. And so when you are provisioning your site, you are going to put your basically your site name, your URL of your site here, and then you're just going to tell it which site design ID to apply. And this works. And so that's how you could think about some possibilities of what you could do with this. You could have questions in the form asking them maybe a drop down that says, what type of site would you like to have? Or it could look at what department they're in and look at, you might have certain templates you want them to have for certain departments. You could go crazy. You could have all kinds of interesting stuff. So this is copying over a site design. But what you could do is, not copying it over, it's applying the site design. If you had a drop down, let me just kind of give you an idea of what that would look like. Site design, and then you can make this multiple choice. So I'll just say drop down. Cool, ugly, I'm just going to make up categories there. So those are my different site categories for my company. And then depending on what they pick from that, I'll do a switch. So depending on what they pick when they fill out the form, when they choose site design, it's going to have different options. So one of the options I put was cool, maximize this. And then another option that I put was ugly. And then I could have different, let me rename this. Hopefully you get the drift of what's possible with these things. I'll just say ugly, just so you can visually see what it's doing here. So the cool site might have this site template or site design to apply. And then the ugly site, might have a different site design. It might be, 223 or something, whatever the site design ID is of the other one. So as you can see, once it gets through this flow, it's going to look at what you picked, and then it's going to decide based on what you picked, it's going to do a switch. So you could have several here of different site designs that it's going to apply. So just kind of let your creativity run wild. So the cool thing about having this manual trigger is that you could, if you use that intra option, you'd be able to do that the run only users concept. But another trigger you could create a SharePoint site, create a list, and have just a form people are filling out that says site name, site description, site owner, whatever else you want to ask them. And then you could have a different trigger. You could say, SharePoint when an item is created could be your trigger. And then you could use the data from the form they filled out. Instead of what I'm doing, I'm using the data from this input. And then another trigger you could do could be a Microsoft form. You could have a Microsoft form that asks them their site name and description. You can even put branching in either one of these types of forms, a SharePoint list or a Microsoft form. And you can have a very complex site provisioning form that asks them a lot of information. So yeah. Anything else that you all think that you might want to do besides control the name of the site, control the owners and the members, control the home page, control the template that gets applied? I've been doing this for, again, like I mentioned, about 20 years. So those are really the most common things. Another thing that I did recently on a project is that they had set up just like a template site that just had a whole bunch of documents in it already. Now, if you're doing a site design, one thing you can do in your site design is define libraries and lists that you want it to create, and even columns that you want them to have. But in this case, I didn't have any kind of specific columns, and the site already gets this default documents library that just has all the basic columns in it. So what we did in this project recently was I did a get files action. I'll just show you. I've got a few more minutes. SharePoint get files. Get files. And then it's just going to go to whatever template site I want to use. And it's just going to go to that library where I'm keeping all the files that I want every one of these sites. Like, think about it as like a common one that we have is a project site template. So a lot of projects that you do need to have certain files, like a project charter, and you have certain templates you use for those. I do want to do a whole other power hour about content types. This is not content types. This is just putting files that they're just already going to exist in a library when you create the site. So this is going to go get all the files, and then for each file that it gets, it's going to copy it over. And so what you could do is, first of all, you might need to know if it's a folder or not. So I'm going to do a condition. Because even if it's a file and you copy it over, it's just going to put it exactly in the right path that it belongs in. It's going to create all the folders. But if it's just an empty folder that you want to create, then you need to go out of your way to tell it to create a folder, just an empty folder, or else it'll just skip over it. So I'll just say is folder. So when it gets the files, if it is folder, is folder is Boolean and it's true. So as it gets to each object that is in that library, if it is a folder, then it's going to do a SharePoint create folder. create new folder, and then it's going to, I don't think I have time to go through this whole process of listing it out, but the other one is going to be to copy the file over. Because I have to put my variables in here for whatever my new site is, etc. So it's going to, if it is a folder, it's just going to create a folder and then move on to the next thing. But if it's a file, it's going to do a copy file action and copy the file from where it was to the new place using that same concept of what we did up here when we copied that home page. It's just going to be copying all the files in the library. All right, let me see. Switch it back. All right, so let's see if I had any last questions. Yeah. So I hope you all enjoyed that. I know it's kind of technical, but it's fun kind of showing the high level of what all the different options are and then digging into all the pros and cons and just kind of things to consider. So I thought of all the common things we do with site provisioning. So I hope you all enjoyed that and you'll be able to go out and provision sites and let users maybe fill out a form or request a site in some way that you devise. And now you know all the different pros and cons of these different actions that you'll be able to use to allow you to have this form, this site request form. And a lot of organizations have turned off the ability for people to just have that create site button, so because they want them to go through this more formal process. So I hope you all have a good afternoon. And let's see, we have, when you go to iwmentor.com, you can click schedule at the top to see when the next power hour is going to be. It's Wednesdays at 11 Central. Again, I'm Laura Rogers. Subscribe to my channel, Wonder Laura, and all the training on all this stuff, Power Automate, SharePoint, everything is on our site at iwmentor.com. Thanks, everyone.